Uh-oh, we have a red alert up next on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Wednesday, March 4th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers. Apologies for my stupid little joke there up at the top. It had been a little bit too quiet here, Chris, on the injury front lately. But today we learned Reds starter Hunter Greene is dealing with an elbow injury and will undergo an MRI. Greene claims that he has no UCL damage, but not so sure I believe that. He said that he dealt with bone spurs down the stretch of last season, also had an injection. Pretty crazy that we're just learning about this now, again, on Wednesday, March 4th. But here we are. It is a rapidly evolving situation. But how far did you lower Hunter Greene in your rankings? How do we treat him in fantasy drafts right now?
Yeah, I dropped him to about 45 at starting pitcher, which comes out to about 150. And I think that's a good spot for the currently known level of risk reward, I suppose, is the way to put it, because ultimately I can't say we know very much right now about this injury, because there was quote from Hunter Greene or from Terry Francona that he's going to have an MRI. I also saw some discussions that it was like he's going to get a second opinion. So from Dr. Neil Alatrash,
who famously does a lot of the elbow surgeries.
Yeah, him and Dr. Keith Meister are kind of the two big elbow surgery guys now, the two big orthopedic surgeons for MLB. And, you know, it's one of those situations where, based on what we know right now, we know he has bone spurs. He said no UCL damage. Does that mean there's no damage? Does that mean there's no flexor tendon damage or, I don't know, PCL damage or whatever? I'm sure there's other tendons in there. Like we have no idea the extent of what we're looking at here. What we know is Hunter Greene said he had this injury late last season and pitched through it and then had some kind of injection. Was that a PRP injection to promote healing? Was it a cortisone injection to deal with pain and soreness? We have no idea right now. So we are very much in an information vacuum at this point, and that makes it really hard to know how to react to this. I don't want to... I mean, I say I don't want to overreact, but I think you'd rather overreact.
You have to react accordingly to this.
I think, and given that this is a big name, hard throwing pitcher, you certainly can't not react to it. So I'm, like I said, moved him down to about 45 at SP. It's around 150. That puts him, I think I put him one spot behind Mackenzie Gore. And I do think that is a part of the rankings at SP where you start to run out of sure things. And Mackenzie Gore is not a sure thing. So that's where I went, but I really don't have a good sense of it because it's entirely possible Hunter Greene ends up not having surgery, takes 3 or 4 weeks off, is back in mid-April, and pitches without issue for the rest of the season. Because the thing we know is pretty much every pitcher has something going on in their elbow if you look closely enough. A lot of these guys have bone spurs that they're able to pitch through. Carlos Rodon pitched through bone spurs all of last season and then had surgery. The problem is, while there are some high-end good outcomes here, there's also, you can look at Carlos Rodon, who had surgery in October to clean up bone spurs and loose bodies in his elbow, and he probably won't be pitching in the majors until mid-April. That's about 6 months.
Yeah.
Spencer Schwellenbach seems to be dealing with a similar injury, and we're not sure if he's going to pitch this season. You know, it looks like a minimum of 3 months if you have the surgery. But I can also look at Walker Buehler when he had his second Tommy John surgery. I looked this up earlier today. It started out with bone spurs. And he had surgery to fix that. He was also dealing with a flexor strain, so it's not exactly the same. But the bone spurs ended up leading basically to the Tommy John surgery. So you just don't know how this is going to work out, but there's a wide range of possible outcomes right now that runs from he's on a similar timetable to Carlos Rodon and is a dominant pitcher for most of the season. And there are certainly plenty of outcomes where Hunter Greene just doesn't pitch in the majors this season for one reason or another. So even 150-ish might be too high, because that's higher than I have like Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon, who are on, like we said, similar timetables here.
Yeah, so I lowered Hunter Greene to SP 57. That is 186th overall, and that is
could be right,
just behind Carlos Rodon, because I figured Carlos Rodon is currently injured. He's going to be back a lot sooner, we think, than Hunter Greene. He's not as talented as Hunter Greene, but it felt like the right place to kind of speculate and move Hunter Greene to for now. And we're really not going to learn anything, I don't think, until next week, because according to Charlie Goldsmith, who has been all over this situation, covers the Reds, he said the Reds are in wait-and-see mode until Tuesday to see what the plan is going to be moving forward for Hunter Greene. So if you are currently drafting or drafting this weekend, again, you probably shouldn't. Most people just like wait until the latest possible time to draft, like right up until opening day.
Something like 90% of drafts have not happened yet.
Yeah. But on the off chance that you are drafting, I think you just have to be very, very cautious with this situation. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about some possible replacements for the Reds right after this.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam! It is a basketball party. It's March! Expect the unexpected!
Welcome back in FBT Express. Again, the big news that Hunter Greene is dealing with a right elbow injury and is going for an MRI. He says he has no UCL damage, but we'll wait and see what we learn here. And I do just want to apologize to all Reds fans and fantasy baseball fans, because I drafted Hunter Greene just yesterday in the Great Baseball Invitational in the 3rd round. This is
it was the wrong pick the whole way.
I mean,
you asked me if you should take Hunter Greene or Yordan Alvarez. I told you to take Yordan Alvarez, who never gets hurt. And it just, I'm sorry.
It is just so deflating, Chris. I don't even want to draft anymore.
It sucks when you're in the middle of a slow draft and someone.
What is the point of even drafting anymore when you just lost your 3rd round pick? It's, oh man, I feel awful.
I mean, hey, when you had Mike Mager on, didn't he lose like multiple early or high dollar players and still won the overall auction championship?
I think Yordan Alvarez was his highest priced player.
And I think he had a high priced pitcher who got hurt. You can survive.
Blake Snell,
is what I'm saying. Yeah. His number 1 SP was Blake Snell. So you can survive this.
I hope so, man. But it's just so deflating. Oh man.
Every time Hunter Greene's gotten brought up this offseason, I've just been kind of like, because I was higher on the consensus than the consensus on him last year. And this year, it's just like every time we brought it up, I didn't want to say anything, but it was always like, I don't know if I love him as a top 10 SP.
Yeah, I was squeamish about it, but I think just last week or 2 weeks ago when we did our starting pitcher previews, I acknowledged that, man, I want to be in so badly, but I'm just so nervous about the injury history. And then, boom, first time I draft him, look what happens here. I do think this is good news for Chase Burns.
Yes.
He probably was always going to be in the rotation anyway, but this, I think, fortifies Chase Burns being in the rotation. Who is next up? It seems pretty clear to me, Chris, that Rhett Lauder, their 7th overall pick back in, I believe, 23 would make a lot of sense here. What is your take on Rhett Lauder? Any interest in him as a deep sleeper now, I guess?
Yeah, they have a couple of other guys, Brandon Williamson and Chase Petty. They've talked a lot about Williamson, especially. Chase Petty was a 1st-round pick in 2021. He's only like 22 or 23 years old. So I don't want to write those guys off entirely, but Rhett Lauder made his major league debut back in 2024. He was a top 10 pick about a year before that. He barely pitched last year. He had an elbow strain in spring training that derailed his season.
Another one. Perfect.
Yeah, and then what actually ended his season was actually an oblique injury that he suffered in May, and he was just never able to get back from it. And Lauder's minor league numbers are not as good as you would hope for a guy who is pretty much a top 100 prospect across the board. I think Fangraphs had him at 101 or 102, but Baseball America has him like 75th. MLB.com, he's in like the 80s. So prospect people still like Rhett Lauder. Great command, good enough strikeout rate, lots of ground balls. The comp that I was thinking, and this is a weird one because I was thinking an Andrew Abbott comp, which is weird because Abbott's a lefty, Lauder's a righty. Abbott's a fly ball pitcher, an extreme fly ball pitcher, Lauder more of a ground ball pitcher. But that kind of outcome where it's probably less than a strikeout per inning, but good whip, good control, and a useful ERA, I think that's a reasonable hope for Rhett Lauder. He's not someone that I think has ace upside for fantasy, not someone that needs to be pushed way up draft boards. But when you're talking about who are some of the comps that I made, like, you know, you look at those bench round or final round picks that are guys like Noah Cameron and Ryan Nelson and Quinn Priester, none of whom are bad, but are pretty low ceiling pitchers. I think Rhett Lauder can fit in that. Quinn Priester might actually be a great comp for Rhett Lauder. What we got from Quinn Priester last year could be what you could expect from Rhett Lauder. So I think you put him in that conversation, bench flyer, someone who has a little bit of upside and now seemingly has a pretty clear runway for a role. He's looked good this spring. It's only 2 starts, but it's 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, I think 2 walks, 1 earned run allowed. The stuff ratings that I've seen for Rhett Lauder in the spring training have been pretty good, you know, above average at least. So he is someone worth getting mildly excited about. He's not Hunter Greene. He's not Chase Burns. So don't go into the season expecting anything like that from Rhett Lauder. But he is certainly a name to know for the late rounds in even 12-team leagues. I think he's in that discussion.
Yeah, again, I think his minor league season in 2024 was actually really good. 3.64 ERA, 1.15 whip. He had 9.4 K per 9, 2 walks per 9. He did that across 3 levels. It was only 1 start at AAA, and then did get 6 starts in at the majors towards the end of that season. Yeah. He actually performed.
It was a 1.18 ERA.
He kept runs off the board, but he wasn't getting whiffs, and all the underlying stuff didn't really buy what Rhett Lauder was doing. But he's a good prospect. According to Fangraphs, it's a 60 grade slider, 50 fastball, 50 changeup, 50 command. So that's a pretty good pitcher. So I do think he's in that kind of bench upside flyery range of fantasy baseball, fantasy baseball. I'll say basketball. I got fantasy basketball playoffs going on right now. So I guess
that'll happen. I did actually, I will say this. I just moved Rhett Lauder ahead of Roki Sasaki.
I don't think that's crazy.
Sasaki's more talented, but I think that guy's a long way from being an impact major leaguer.
I would probably put Lauder in that kind of Mick Abel, you know, last pick flyer, upsidey type pitcher range of fantasy baseball drafts right now. Yep. Again, the big news, Hunter Greene dealing with an elbow injury, and we are just in wait and see mode right now. So Chris has him around SP 45. I have him SP 57. Approach with caution. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again tonight to draft, but specifically on this podcast later this week. Bye-bye.